Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a very special episode of the show. We've got a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in a second. But first, let me introduce you to my co-captains here today. We basically got the 4 Fusion Friday team together. We've got George Lamie and Eric Porter. And we're here to introduce you to a very special musician who plays in a band that the three of us like quite a bit, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. We've got Mr. Marbin himself, Dani Rabin. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great to have you on. We love the music of your band. For those of you who are watching who maybe don't know Marbin, a very cool band who play like an interesting mix of like jazz rock and progressive rock. And Dani, of course, is their guitar player. And we've got all sorts of stuff we want to talk to him about today. They have a brand new album called Dirty Horse, which is now available. If you go to bandcamp.com/album/dirty-horse, or just go to bandcamp.com, Marbin, and check it out. And you can go check out all their releases. But this is the brand new one. Great cover with the zebra on the front and some really cool music on there. So
thank you so much.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. We've been following your music for quite a while.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's great to have you on here. So the guys have got some questions for you here today that we're going to fire them off at you. But feel free to add any kind of stories and anecdotes and things like that, because this is all about you, and we want to hear your take on the music and whatnot. Cool.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's a career in fusion is something very daring, as some of you guys may know. It's sort of like, chasing this girl that doesn't really want you, and it's very hard to get. And then when you finally get her and it's time to do something, you find out she doesn't have any genitals, and she likes to kick you in the balls. So.
So who would do that, Dani? That's awesome.
And also, when you finally get the girl to agree to go out with you, you say, "Let's go to the dance," and you go to the dance, and there's nobody there with you guys, right?
Yeah, that's correct. No, it's an awesome life, but an acquired taste for sure. You got to really love the music, like a lot, and we do.
Well, that's the important thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So why don't we get started, Dani? Let's do a little talking about Dirty Horse. So I know this came out on June 1st, and I've been listening to it since I got it. I did a review on the website for Sea of Tranquility, but
I saw that. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for posting it. So I mean, there's a number of tracks on here that I love, and obviously the opener, Freeman Massacre, is fantastic. Love when you and Dani play those unison lines, but why don't you tell? The music's so complex, and I think when you guys go out, you kind of, if I remember what you said about kind of the way you do things, you guys go out on the road and play stuff and kind of work it out, and then you go in the studio. But so obviously you get this stuff done. What about so tracks like that? Are they really cut live? And then you kind of just overdub a few things, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, it's well, the process is this. We've been doing this a long time. So from 2009 to 2013, we did what I'd consider the typical fusion thing, which is to sort of go in the studio and dream up an album. And the reason was that we weren't really a band at that. I mean, we started touring in 2011 full time, but I feel like we're one of the few fusion bands that exist right now, in the sense that a lot of fusion bands are really studio project or like superstar conglomerates. Like, Weather Report was a real band. Mahavishnu was a real band. Return to Forever was a real band. There's sort of a dynamic that and an interplay that's present in the music that goes a little bit beyond just overdubbing cool parts. And in the beginning, we were overdubbing cool parts. The first 3 albums were like that, and then after that, we just started touring so much that when we would try to do that, it just felt like we were making some other band's album, because all of a sudden the things that we were, just the way we played, had sort of a life of its own. So when we were just, let's say, starting a song in the studio with a shaker loop, it's like, well, why the fuck are we doing that? Like that makes no sense. We know how to play the song. So what the process kind of changed between the initial version of it was to ride up a storm in the studio and add layers and do all this stuff, and then try to figure out a version of that for our live playing. Uh, and what ended up happening from, I would say, 2014 till now, present day, we would write songs. We would have sort of a basic arrangement of them, rehearse them maybe. We don't rehearse, but like sort of shout at the rhythm section what to do. Me and Dani would kind of get the unison parts tied together in the van or in a coffee shop or something. We really don't rehearse. It's not good. We should do a little more than we're doing, but we would get it really together between the two of us, and then we would shout vague instructions and work it up in sound checks, and then eat shit live a lot in the beginning of every song, but and things would just, we'd go on these long tours like 30 days, and if something didn't work, like I had an idea for the chord changes for my solo, and then like the second chord, I'm just like, oh, like that felt terrible, and then the entire show I have to, like, that's just the form. I can't reteach the bassist the new. I'm committed to that for the show, but that nausea of every chorus playing on that terrible choice is so visceral that you remember it after that to be like, let's never do that again, so things kind of took shape that way. And we would just make mistakes. When you're playing live, you have this real sense of what works and what doesn't work that you will never have practicing at home. So at home, you can come up with some, it's like, ooh, it sounds Holdsworthy. And then you just play it in front of people like, oh, it feels like you just had some bad meat or something. It just feels so bad physically to just be out there committed to that choice for 7 minutes. So things would change like that night to night until they would reach some sort of balance in the music. And then we'd keep it. And then once a year-ish, and we would work up our set that way. And then after we tour with the music for about a year, and these things would change a million times that way, we just go into the studio, record with separation, the four of us. We do full takes of everybody with the solos. We don't overdub the solos. And then we just, fix little things that need fixing, not to go too crazy with editing. And if we add things, like in that, I added some rhythm guitars and some percussion and Dirty Horse. That our last couple of albums before that were pretty stripped, were bare bones. We were really trying to go for a quartet sound. And this one, we wanted it to be more expensive. But the four of us, all of our parts were played together at Sweetwater Studios. And we just did it that way. The unison lines, the solos. There's none of that shit of like the drums from one take and the solo from another. Like if we're doing any sort of edits, we're taking everybody's parts played together, and we're very committed to that.
So basically your studio albums are just, you're basically giving the listener kind of like what you guys do live on stage. I mean, it's a very live approach and it's spontaneous.
It is, but it also is the most polished version possible of the live thing.
Right.
So, and we also, a part of me always wants to make like a really purist 70s approach kind of album. Like, you listen to those Weather Report albums where they're just playing no click track, hit record, nice studio, nice microphones. But there is something, you pay a price for that too. It's like it becomes jammy. Like there is something even about those albums that's a little bit, it's hard to say exactly what it is, but they don't feel as, they don't pack that very direct punch that we're used to now with fusion albums. You pay the price of having a little bit less of that. It's more kind of like things open up slowly. I feel like our albums try to get to the point a tiny bit quicker, if that makes sense, and really being selective.
The liner,
Go ahead.
I was going to say the liner notes say it was recorded in 3 days. That's a result of how worked out you guys are before you hit the studio?
Yeah, we did basically, I think we did 3 to 5 takes of each song. What we would do is we would just play the song, play it again, play it again, play it again, play it again, beginning to end with the solos, just to have options. And yeah, we just did a few takes of each song, and that took, and the first day you're getting sounds. So it's really kind of like, I would say the first day we were playing from probably like 2 p.m. to 8. And then we had the second day was a full day. And the third day we were done by like 5 and drove home. So just playing, playing the stuff beginning to end. Now we did play at that point, those songs live and that whole set live, like, I don't know, hundreds of times. So it's weird, man. It's a song, it's like somebody parachutes you into this unfamiliar terrain, and it's not interesting. I mean, it is interesting in a way to see you walk it for the first time, because you might be eaten by a mountain lion or something, but when you have familiarity, it's like it's interesting in a different way, but you also don't want to be over familiar, right? It's like one of our songs, like African Chapter or Red Line, that I literally like played a billion times. I feel like I'm way past the point where, way past my peak with it, because I've already, it's sort of like somebody telling you, like, drive in an interesting way to the grocery store. It's like I've already driven all the ways. I would have to make a new vehicle to make it interesting. So it's sort of like that. You can't be if you're over familiar, it's not good either. So you just got to find that sweet spot where you feel like you're ready to make an album, and making improvised music, it's tough to commit to the solo that's gonna go on an album, right? It's like every night you play it different. When you're making your studio album, it's sort of like, that is now the crystallized version of whatever I was going for. How do you choose it? So many twists and turns. So, but a part of having to, I think, is the art of making these kind of albums. Right? Like identifying, after checking out a lot of nooks and crannies of the song, checking out, like, it's like, well, this one I really liked what happened here, and that reminds me of a direction I go in. It's sort of like you making some nice conclusion of all the places you've been the last year inside this little form. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is there ever any pressure when when you cut a really good solo on one of these studio tracks to say, I want to try and recreate that live and do it just that same way because it did come out so good?
I mean, I would guess that if I was like better at learning solos, there might have been, but since I literally have no, like, I have, everybody has licks and finger things they do, like physical patterns, but like if it's like a whole phrase that just came out awesome, I mean, yeah, like, but what ends up happening most of the time is you start going for it, and then you kind of like you miss a little rhythm, miss a little note, and then you're like, what the fuck am I doing? And you're in this weird place in your playing that's like trying to transcribe yourself from the, it creates this disconnect that, that's how that's literally I have a baby, and it reminds me of when she tries to crawl and falls on her face. It's like, I know what you were trying to do. You don't have the skills. So that's how I feel about myself. Like, I just don't have the way to make that connect. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay. So, but I would guess, like, if you had some crazy perfect pitch and the ability, then you might be better at making terrible choices with your playing. because you know, I mean, like it's not gonna be like it was on the album. First of all, it's an album. Everybody else, your part, the way your part, and you know, your when you're playing this kind of music, it's like catching waves. If you're not writing something the rhythm section is doing spontaneously or just trying to make it happen, it will never happen the same way twice. So, you know, it's like you posturing like exactly how you did on the surfboard, but there's no wave coming. It's just like, but I really liked it. It's like, well, you got to just really learn to like what's coming, or
Yeah, yeah.
you know, or forever be stuck in this thing of, you know, a lot of people now have this idea of production that's more like a Pink Floyd show or something, where everything is that moment and that comfortably numb solo is coming. They have rehearsed it. It's coming, and it's coming at the same spot every night. Maybe they'll hit it a little bit different and it will feel better depending on how great they're performing it. But it's, you know, you could really aim for a certain moment where the drummer and bassist are going to do something. It's going to be a light show. An airplane with lasers is going to come out of the sky. It's going to be real epic. With a fusion show, it's more like, you know, you got to just find out it's coming when it's coming, you know. So the best Alan Holdsworth told me. I remember we were in the van with him uh, in 2012. We were the opening band for his trio, and it's like late in the game for him already. But he would never talk about music. But you know, me and Danny were just like, Alan, give us some advice. Just tell us something. And he's like, all this music shit, you just wiggle your fingers and hope for the best. I was like, yes. That is awesome. And it's really true. You know, it's like he meant it kind of as a half joke, but it's a whole truth. You know, it's really that, you know, you passed your training, past all that shit. Like, you don't know what's coming. Like, you don't know, you can't make, if everybody's really improvising and you're playing these tunes and there's, you know, the arrangement's sort of minimal, you just hope for the best and do the best you can do.
True.
Yeah.
Nice.
So how's the feedback been so far from the fans? I mean, I know you guys had a little, I think you had a tour prior to the release of the album, and I know you've got something coming up that we'll talk about a little bit, but have you gotten some feedback from it so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think people like it. You know, we made a lot of albums at this point. I do think this is our best so far. Um, you know, on the level of feedback, funny thing is, like, for me personally, is I love positive attention. It's, you know, like anybody does, but the negative stuff too. Like, it's just like on the internet, you get like this infinite amount of hatred for anything you put out. And I decided, like, I don't know how much you guys follow our Facebook, but I have a whole it got our Instagram deleted. They literally deleted our Instagram because I dedicated our Instagram to hashtag Marbin Strikes Back. When, like, anytime anybody writes anything negative, I get into it, you know, and I like talk to them very politely, but I always find an angle to let their inner demon take the reins in the conversation and just ride it as long as I can. Uh, you guys are gonna love this. This is literally from like 2 days ago. I have it. So this guy, he writes, "Good band, but you seem to play most stuff at FFF, which is like Italian for forte fortissimo or something like that." And then he wrote in parentheses, "Listen to Mahavishnu and Weather Report." And I wrote, "Are these like really old bands?" And he writes back, "You call yourself a fusion band and you've never heard of two of the greatest fusion bands in music history? You must be joking." So I wrote, "I think the number one problem of artists today is that they listen to too old of stuff, which in turn causes their stuff to sound old too. What we try to bring to fusion is a new sound by listening to newer things. I'll check them out though. Are they on Bandcamp?" And then I wrote him back, "I looked up Maharishi Orchestra on Google. but all I could find was a self-help Indian dude who taught John Lennon how to touch his toes 60 years ago. However, I did find The Weather Report on YouTube, and I see why you like them. The dude that looks like Geppetto in a skull cap on the keys does a great job using those vintage Nintendo tones, which really bring me back. The tune I heard had a Mario Brothers meets disco vibe, and I can dig what they're trying to do there. Bassist was a bit all over the place, though. But with that being said, I know from running my own fusion band that it's hard to explain to your bassist that he should stay in his lane. Thanks for the recommendation. Good stuff.
Oh,
Keeps
he
going.
probably
And he
hated
wrote,
that.
traditionally, no, you wrote traditionally fusion was called jazz rock in the early 70s. And I think most musicians still think about the combination of styles when someone says fusion. I would call you more of a progressive rock band rather than fusion. The bass player, who you say was also all over the place, is Jaco Pastorius. He is considered the greatest innovative electric bass player that ever played the electric bass. And John McLaughlin of the Mahavishnu Orchestra, capitalized, is considered one of the greatest jazz guitar players ever. So I wrote, I am not a musicologist, so I'm not sure what early musicians meant when they said fusion. We decided to go with it because it sounds cool, and we are trying to get away from politics with the whole progressive thing. In regards to the musicians you talked about, I'm not sure where you get your info, but I did some research of my own, and neither of these guys you mentioned have a TikTok channel. If they are considered so great, they should really work on their social so that more people can find out about them.
Oh man.
And that'll keep going, won't it, Danny?
Oh my God, dude. I can't stop. I can't stop.
You would think at some
a
point
real
you'd be like, all
problem.
right, this guy is totally like putting me on here, but he just kept playing along, I guess, right?
Not grasping it.
Yeah, dude, it goes. I'll go as long as they do. It's amazing. Yeah,
Welcome to
dude.
the
But
internet.
yeah, we got like a thousand people loving that one. That was. I feel like
Those are
I've
great.
really I created the career in music just so I could arrive at the strikebacks. It's truly nothing brings me more joy. Like I feel numb. I was like hanging out. It's like me and my wife's 5-year anniversary, and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Can't stop."
He's on a roll. He's on a roll.
She was pissed. Yeah.
So
It's like you don't understand. This is important.
I saw you post recently that Markovich is not going to be able to do these dates you got coming up.
Oh, you heard about that?
Yeah, are you still
Yeah.
feeling
Oof.
as positive and about going out and promoting the record?
Oh. Yeah. That was a real. That was a real wrench in the wheel. Let me tell you. So yeah, his now almost legally ex-wife, technically ex-wife, basically decided that she had enough of that family and left him with full custody of a 3-year-old. So he's figuring it out. His family's probably going to fly from Israel to take care of the girl, and he's going to come on part of the July tour. And he did come on the Cruise to the Edge in one show before, but we did like 10 shows without him in April as a trio, which was so, I mean, it turned out well. We kind of hit the ground running on that. Thankfully, when you take a saxophone out of a fusion band, it's kind of like a power trio. And in terms of what I'm doing, obviously it changes everything, but I'm not used to playing on keyboards on chords. I'm like, in terms of the texture behind me, it's always power trio. So at least it wasn't that big of a shock sonically. Like, if it was, I don't know, a band like anybody else, Kick the Cat or something like that, it's like that would be much more disorienting for kind of structurally. But yeah, it's totally fucked up, to just kind of like, it's a lot of bass solos all of a sudden, I'll tell you that. Yeah, it's, but it's life. I went through one divorce, and that was not simple. I kept touring through it, but no kids in the picture though back then. Yeah, we're still doing the July tour. I'm not quite sure exactly how we're gonna proceed after that with the live stuff. We have our new 90 minutes, all new stuff. It's already like done. We're playing when we go on tour now. We don't play any of the songs from Dirty Horse at all. We're just we're on to the next thing. And that'll be the next album, which we will make. And yeah, he needs to just kind of land on his feet a little bit and realize what's what, and then we'll see where we take it from there. But yeah, Danny's been not only, you know, obviously an amazing saxophonist and co-composer, but he's also really been the manager of the band. He's, we used to play about 300 shows a year. Before COVID, we were about 200 some. And then, even through COVID, we were like 2020, we did like 70 shows somehow, so, and he's booked every single one of them. We don't use a booking agent. So, it's certainly a real damper on things to have this life situation happen. But, you marry a monster, sometimes you get bit by the monster. So
life. Yep.
No judgment.
Yeah.
Well, give him our best, Danny, and hopefully everything works out.
Yeah, I will.
And since we were talking about Danny,
fine.
Why don't you talk about your rhythm section, Everett Benton and John Adele? Let us tell us a little about them.
Well, before I do that, I will tell you that we have a saying. I told it to Steve Morse on Cruise to the Edge first time we were there, and he literally turned away from me and walked the other way, not saying anything. But it's we say that rhythm sections are like underwear, that their function is to keep dickheads in place, but when they get shitty, you need a new pair.
Alrighty then.
No, we love them. We love them. Everett's an amazing drummer. He's our most recent addition. And before that, we really had a series of musicians that weren't really jazz players, that were more, either coming from the metal world or the prog world, or even the gospel world before that. And that's the first time we really had a straight up jazz boy that plays fusion, and it opens up things in an incredible way. And yeah, I love how Everett plays. It's just very loose, and just the music can go in many directions. He's really improvising. It's wonderful. And John's a great bassist. Yeah, it's John has been he's the longest standing like Marbin member other than me, and Danny survived the longest. He's been with us since 2015. And we got him kind of when he was pretty green, and really having him grow inside the band, it's been an incredible thing to watch. He really built technique and vocabulary, and and just gets a great sound and plays super well. It's this, I mean, there's something so nice about being an actual band, not sort of we've played shows, with Oz Noise bands and Scott Henderson's bands and all these like, 3 initial bands, HBC, whatever they call it, and you could see, you can sense, even you see a guy like Dennis Chambers, who's just the best, so good. But there's a certain, they don't have, they have the confidence in their own chops, but they don't have the confidence in the band sound, if that makes sense, when they're on stage. And for me to go on with these guys, I just know everything's going to be fine. Everything is always going to be fine. We've crashed it and burned it together so many ways. It's like, it's not even if something bad will happen musically, it's not going to be that bad, and nobody, it's just, we just know how to play together. So I think that's a rare thing in today's world. to actually have that sort of thing of like playing with the same guys for many, many years, and just having people have this awareness of your vocabulary and your playing and just your taste to kind of know where you're going, and also how to not just Mickey Mouse you and just chase you. Like the worst is somebody who's done homework on you and is trying to play behind you and tries to catch everything. It's like it's much more of a delicate dance than that to play well together. You got to contrast a lot of the time. You got to frame what other people are doing, and it's the most novice move to be kind of well studied and try to just lock in with somebody all the time. You know, this music like lives off of contrast, moving into that thing. So knowing when to do things. Yeah, it's very comfortable playing with these guys. I really love them.
You guys really
Yeah.
hustle on the promotional front. I mean, you're playing hundreds of dates every year for, I don't know, maybe the whole way through. It sure seems like it. You feel that's
Yeah.
really important in Fusion, right? To get you.
I mean, it seems to me like there's a real battle between what I would consider the real world and what what the digital world is becoming. And I feel like the next generation of people, to them, it's not even like album making isn't really a thing anymore. Everything is singles, and I mean everything is streaming MP3s. Like I'm afraid that people will not even have waves in the near future. You know, it's like it's just it. The quality of things are going down, and also I think the dream is to make a very viral bit of content, and it's almost like people like the newer generation of musicians sort of want to take all the worst things from fame and have them to themselves, like the self obsession, narcissism, uh, the likes, all that, but none of the money and I don't know, gratification of doing something that you like and something good. Just everything's very clickbaity now. So that direction, I mean, we tried to go down it a bunch of times. We just are not good at it. So we failed. It wasn't really an option. So the touring, I mean, our music is jazz music in general exists for the span of time you play it. And it's sort of a thing you have to keep breathing life into, or it's not actually there. And our records, as much as I love them, and I do, it's to me they're not really the thing. Like the thing we do, um, it's nice to have these sort of souvenirs, and I'm very grateful that we do that, and I love that. But to me, that's kind of like a conclusion of each year. That's what an album is. We did this thing. The thing was playing a bajillion versions of these songs and being a part of forming them slowly over time live in front of a lot of people. And that's a nice conclusion, and people can take it home and put it on a shelf. But each one of the, our lives artistically was just being there in those rooms with those people and trying to figure it out in front of them. It's and I think that's really the real deep part about improvised music, and about what we're trying to do. It's that you want to see somebody trying to tame this thing, that they're attempting to do, and you see, like, you could say a lot of things about, let's say, Weather Report, but it's not perfect music. It's a lot of times just kind of like waiting for something to happen, catching it. It's just this thing of skilled people trying to make something happen in front of you.
Yeah, in a weird way, it's a lot like you talk to like fans of like jam music, all these jam bands, and most of them really don't have a lot to say about the studio records, but they focus on the live performances. So you ask anybody who's a fan of like Fish or Mo or all these countless jam bands, and they'd rather talk to you about, well, that gig in 2019 in Boston, that was the shit, right? And they'll talk about specific shows, whether they've experienced them live or saw them on YouTube or whatever. And they don't talk about the studio albums all, because the studio albums is just a way to kind of put the music out there. But when we go on the road, that's when these songs are going to come to life, and they may be different every single time, right? Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's also, yeah, we play a lot of the hippie circuit. They do book us. So, and I remember I'm from Israel, so we didn't have jam band music. It just never made it there. So Grateful Dead, all that stuff, it just didn't infiltrate the culture. We had weird things be our like radio hits compared to here. Like King Crimson was gigantic in Israel. Like that first out in the Court of the Crimson King, and 21st Century Schizoid Man is
What's your
still one
favorite
of the
album?
most played songs. Yeah, great. Yeah, it's a great album, and it's on the radio constantly in Israel, and weird things you wouldn't think. Alan Parsons is really big in Israel, and yeah, jam band music was not. So for me, going to these festivals and seeing the headliners was I remember the first time we played one, I was just kind of walking around all the vendors selling like pipes and scarves and tie-dye stuff, kind of on the periphery of the thing, and not really engaging with the thousands of people watching the stage, because I didn't understand what it is that they were seeing that I wasn't seeing. And then I got super stoned, and I started noticing, all of a sudden it opened up to me. First of all, Dani was just like with me, like even more. We had like a golf cart. He was like waving to people like the Queen of England, and we're just like having a really good time. And then we parked the thing, and he was like, "Oh my God, I think I'm high. This actually sounds good to me." And I was like, "No way!" So it's like, and I was like listening to it. It's like, oh, it does kind of sound good. But then I started seeing, like, in front of me was like a hippie chick in a shawl, just like doing this, and I was like, whoa. And then I was seeing like all the people interacting with each other. People were doing drugs, like dancing, not even looking at the stage. And then I realized that these people were curating um an environment of drug abusing hippies, and just keeping this. It was kind of like a protective little blanket of music that they were putting over this experience. They were letting them have their space. Like if Alan Holdsworth was there, it would start giving people seizures. He could have played over those grooves. It would just fuck everything up. It's not about that, so I think you're correct in the sense that that their live thing is the thing, because you cannot do that. It's about curating an experience through music and like laying this protective sort of umbrella over a thing and changing the vibe slowly, and really, or it's almost like you know the constraints of music before drugs were introduced to the culture was that you had to play within the periphery of sober consciousness. Like Beethoven, these guys, they didn't think, it's like, what if we drug them? What if like we take the concert hall and we just give them acid? And it's like, because then different things would start working, and also different certain harmonies and certain sounds would become scary and unpleasant. So you know, I think there's something when you listen to Jimi Hendrix, where it was like original shamanism, where the idea was that the person on stage, would take the drugs and show you a gateway to a new world. Kind of like if you read about like ayahuasca or something like that, the way that the people do those ceremonies, that the shaman takes the drugs and then sings songs to the people to cure them that he's taking from the other side. Obviously when you introduce the concept to like the hippies, they're like, no, I'm doing the drugs. but traditionally it was like, the trained medium would, like, take them, have an experience, bring it to this realm and cure people. So yeah, when you have a bunch of fucked up people, uh you certainly are in charge of orchestrating their experience, and I see the value in that. We are not good for that. We are so intense. We are just, I mean, I've seen people on these hippie things that were like too high. Like, my actual fantasy, a thing that I never did, but I always wanted to, especially like those late night slots at the festival with the light show, is to just get on the mic and be like, "Hello, everybody. We are Marbin, and you're stuck in a loop, 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 in a loop," and just start watching them drop like flies, just in a loop, in a loop, in a loop. It's like the one guy who like didn't get stones, like left standing.
He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think people, and even in those situations, like we have people that really dig what we do, but you need to have a palate for some more intense stuff. We turn away like the people who are, there to see fish.
So
It's
kind of
just,
speaking of that, Danny,
Yeah.
how do you guys go over on Cruise to the Edge? I know you've done that a few times. Has that been a really good gig for you guys?
great. It's the greatest time. It's so cool. Yeah, we had some of the best times there. My God. It's
Except for offending Steve Morris or sending him out.
Yeah, he did not like that joke. Um, yeah, we play a ton of gypsy jazz too, for fun, like Django Reinhardt kind of stuff, and we just do that. I think the management there is really into that, so we just do that a lot on the ship too. But they gave us a ton of shows on the ship, and they were all great. Pretty different than everybody that was on there. I mean, they had Protocol on there, Simon Phillips's new band, Simon Phillips 5V. I don't know how to say it, and they were pretty fusiony, very kind of, remind me of like Steps Ahead or something, like very what you would expect, like fusiony fusion. Um, but it was cool. And that was the only thing that I felt was very related to us. Makachek, Alex was also there. That was sort of like a Holdsworth thing. Um, it's a lot of Holdsworth kind of guys now. It's like they all show up with the headless guitar. We call them the Headless Army. It's like something out of Lord of the Rings. He's like, they're working for him. He has like 7 horsemen show up with headless guitars, play atonal licks. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was it was just the greatest hang, and really, it's vacation. It's gig vacation.
Cool.
But musically, I would say, yeah, we don't really fit. I mean, I'm not quite sure. Um, Progressive music is not an extension of jazz. It's weird. Like there are sort of like two roads that lead to this fusion sound, and one of them is really coming out of classical music approach, and one of them's coming out of jazz, and they seem to meet, but like they don't really, like, you know guys like, I would say, a Scott Henderson and a Tony McAlpine or a Greg Howe are just, there are big differences in approach, even though they produce to maybe like a not so avid listener similar results. But in terms of like language, they just don't think of it at all in the same terms.
I got to ask you about gear. We got a lot of gearheads that watch. What's your
Absolutely.
setup like these days?
Well, oh my God, I would lift my pedal board, but it's so heavy. I have, I play a Barlow guitar now. Ricky Barlow makes these insane guitars, just so good. I played Sour for years, um, and before that, just Strats. And I loved my Sour. I play Scott Henderson let me play his guitar in like 2014 or 15. Then he put me in touch with the company, and I was just like, wow, this is much better than my Strat. So I'm going there. It was like a very comfortable Strat that sounded really good and was quiet. Um, and I played it for years. Um, I just got to a place where I just, we have a lot of fans, and I knew people were buying like sort of the guitar, my configuration. They gave me an artist deal, but it was becoming clear to me that like they have their fusion guy, and they only kind of want one of each. Then they have Scott, so I was looking for a different company to go with, and then Ricky Barlow is a one man shop. He's a luthier out in Long Island. Reached out to me, and we designed a Strat that is just so crazy great. I mean, it's the best guitar I've ever played. So very happy with that. And I play the custom audio electronics OD100s, which is Bob Bradshaw and John Sewer's old company before they sold that to Sewer Guitar. It's under Sewer Guitars now, and they're discontinued. With Sewer, you can I think they make like the PT100, which is maybe the closest thing now, but it's nothing like that. It's sort of based on Mike Landau's. Um, it's a combination like the dirty channel. It's a channel switching amp. The dirty channel is kind of Marshally. The clean channel is very Fendery. Um, and yeah, it's just the greatest amp. I love it. I have two of the OD100s and one of the OD50s. I'm sort of whenever I see one, I kind of buy it. I really like them. And then yeah, I run like a 412 cab with a 100-watt head, and then I have a pretty nice pedal board that Mason from Vertex Effect, the Rig Doctor, designed for me, and I use a lot of his pedals actually. And yeah, I run one of those G2, the Gig Rig switchers. I don't know if you're the guys that have that pedal show, British
Yep.
dudes. They yeah, so Daniel there designed the switcher that's very nice, and yeah, I have like some source audio delay and reverb, an H9 Eventide, a wah, and then all my gain is basically the Vertex stuff. I use the steel string for like a boost. I actually use an RC booster too by Exotic, from just liking Scott Henderson all these years. It's the only thing that stayed. And Ultraphonics distortion, that's my main lead sound. But it's subtle stuff. Just the amp is most of the sound. I have my preferences with pedals, but they're pretty interchangeable. I could survive any gig with a delay, a distortion, and a boost. Um, and I went through the whole era of, I would say, like Goatman, the House of the Dead, and Israeli jazz. Like those couple of years, I had this idea that like I'm using too much stuff, and I just scaled down to just a delay in the effects loop, just laid up on top of my amp, and two pedals and a tuner. And I went that very purist route for a while, and actually learned a lot uh, about just getting a sound, um, and what I like and what I don't like. Also, I use a little bit of like a plexiglass protector in front of my amp, which if I don't know if a lot of guitar players are into that. I wasn't for like on this weird principle, but then I realized that if I have one, I can use much less reverb, uh, which is a good thing. And I realized that I was using reverb to make my sound less scary. Um, and that makes your sound less scary. There's some sort of like kind of visceral physical reaction that you feel from playing in front of a speaker cone pretty loud. And if you just chill that out, you can really relax on ambient effects that make your sound like it's a million miles away. So that really put a lot of things sort of in the right place for me. And yeah, I mean, it's nothing too crazy. I mean, all these guys at the end of the day just use reverb, delay, and distortion. There's not too much more to that story, unfortunately.
Cool. I just want to go back to the album for a second, Danny.
Sure.
I want to two things. Radio School is probably my favorite track, the closer, and it's just got that like a swing feel to it, right? Like an old time swing. I absolutely love that. I don't know why that hit me, and I think those three tracks that close. I mean, usually you front load an album, and I think like Headless Chicken, Midnight Squirrel, and Radio School are just killer at the end.
Thank you.
The weird thing I wanted to ask you about is tell me about the Tibetan throat singing. That kind of threw me. So how did that get into the mix?
Well, all right. I will preface this by saying that the way we name all of our songs is after shit that happens to us in real life on the road. So it's road stories, all 100% of our songs. That specific one, Sid, you're talking about Sid Yiddish Part 2. So, okay, well, it's a long story, but in 2008, me and Danny moved to the States from Israel. And we found out immediately that we have a big problem. We wanted to start a fusion band. That's why we came here. And we didn't know any musicians that lived in Chicago. And we did what a lot of people in that situation would do, which is Craigslist. Now, Craigslist is a wonderful place if you're trying to find like a used couch or somebody willing to pee on you. But if you're trying to find a jazz band, it might not be the place to look. We did not know that at the time. So we just posted a post, and all it said was 2 Israeli jazz musicians looking to start a fusion band. Like 3 minutes go by and we get a response from a profile named Sid Yiddish. And dude writes, "I want to play." And I'm like, all right, here's our address, and we just like set up a time and a date, and we invited him to our home. We lived together at the time. We were like, I don't know, 20 something, 23, 24. And, I opened the door like a few days later, like midday. This dude shows up. I can, I have like a few observations right off the bat. He's like a short, stocky guy dressed entirely in like traditional Jewish garb, but like with a tie-dye yarmulke on top. And I'm like, okay. And he's like wearing like sunglasses inside, which is a big indicator of sanity. And he's also holding like a brown leather bag. And dude looks like he's like an 18th century doctor, right? Like that kind of bag. And he's like looking at me, he's like, "Let's play." Okay. So I like opened the door and I show him into our living room, and Danny's there with like his little soprano, and I'm playing my Strat, and I'm like, "How about a funk groove in C?" And I'm like, and it started like chunking away, and Danny's like playing his little saxophone. Sid Yiddish sits down on the carpet, like, in a cross-legged position, and he puts forth his brown leather bag. He starts unzipping it. It goes like, and he takes out a baby's bib and he puts it on, right? So he has our attention, right? And he takes out an electric toothbrush and he puts it in his mouth and he starts brushing his teeth. And it sounds like this, like. Now, me and Danny are just looking at each other like, I don't think fusion's the same thing in this country. I think it's like a different word. And, and he keeps going. He's like brushing his teeth. And he starts drooling, right? But he thought about that in advance. That's the bib, right? It's catching it. And then he's kind of a heavy guy. So if you do like even a little bit of yoga, you can't sit cross-legged very long. It's hard, even if you're super fit. So he starts like just keeling over to the left, and now he's kind of in the fetal position on our carpet, like 5 minutes into this date, and he's brushing his teeth sideways, and we see this drool just starting to go on our rug, and just like, oh, like, it's like, we need to get this motherfucker out of here, right? So we try to send him off the musician way, which is the only thing we know, which is like, sounded great, man. Let's do it again sometime, which, in musician means get the fuck out of my house, right? And he just springs up and he goes, "It's not over." And we're like, "It's not? What do you mean it's not over?" And he goes, "There's one more song. It's a piece, a solo piece by me. It's Tibetan throat singing." And then he goes, "Sit down." And we both just listen to him. We just like sit down like a bunch of toddlers at a show and tell in our own living room, right? We're looking up at this psychopath, and it's not Tibetan throat singing. He's just screaming at us like, "Rah, rah, rah." And we just try not to laugh, but we seriously can't help it. Like, I'm almost pissing myself just looking at Danny, trying not to laugh. And he's looking, anyway, a decade goes by, right? And we write this song, start telling this story everywhere. And then I get like a Facebook message from Sid Yiddish a decade later. And he's like, "I heard you're playing a song about me." And I'm like, how did you hear? And please don't eat us, right? And it's like, doesn't matter how I heard, I want to hear it. I was like, "Whew, okay." And one day, like, we're making this album last summer, and or in the fall, and I'm brushing my teeth and like just talking to my wife, and the toothbrushing reminded me of his toothbrushing. So I'm telling her the story, and she goes like, "Why don't you answer that Facebook message and invite him to record on Sid Yiddish?" And I'm like, "That's the smartest shit I've ever heard in my life." Right? So a decade later, he shows up through that door, and I opened the door, and he must have lost his relationship to God because he's not wearing the Jewish stuff anymore, but he does have a fish hat, but not the band Fish. It's just like a hat, and he glued a fish to like the top of it. And I'm like, this is the guy. I don't remember his face, but I remember the attitude, the aesthetic. And he just shows up and sits down right here on the floor. He starts brushing his teeth again, and then he screams into this mic. And if you really listen closely to Sid Yiddish Part 2, you hear the toothbrushing in the beginning and the Tibetan throat singing.
That's the greatest story ever.
I'll have to listen for the toothbrush. I definitely heard the singing, but I don't know that I heard the
It's
toothbrush.
banning.
Okay.
That's funny too, is that's one of my favorite songs, either that or Headless Chicken, because you're in annihilation mode on that thing.
Thank you. Yeah, dude, it was pretty epic. Yeah, radio school. Yeah, radio school was basically written because everybody wanted us. We really enjoyed playing Redline, but we've played Redline so much that like we're like, you know what? We're gonna write something like Redline that's not Redline, and then it sort of took a life of its own, and we needed kind of like an open thing in C. But then when we tried to do that live, it wasn't Redline, and after you play a melody, it's like nothing's the same. So, it started off by like, okay, so let's start Danny's solo with just him playing on drums. And then like, well, let's add a bass solo, but then the changes didn't work. So we changed the changes, and I was supposed to have a solo just like my solo in Red, which is like an open thing in C. And then it's like, well, that didn't really work. So we have like all these 2/5s there. So it started off us wanting to just keep playing the same thing, but being tired of the thing. And then us realizing that, okay, we wrote this thing and nothing in the original idea works. So let's get it to work. And the song slowly sprouted out of that one. So that's how radio school came about. Actually, we did do something on the record, that like question and answer thing with the bass solo is something that we just did. We had that idea sort of after the fact. Even when we recorded Sweetwater, it had just a full bass solo, but we didn't feel like that really worked. So we just basically recorded those unison lines and just intersperse it, kind of cut the bass solo in and out of it, and came up with it that way. I thought that was, I guess an idea, something that's more of a modern approach to album making, that moment in the song. Um, but yeah, it's about front loading and back loading albums. That's literally our set. So we it's sort of like we never have to think about where is a good place to put that song, because we play that music as a set of music from beginning to end. So if it doesn't make sense in the show, it won't make sense on the album. So it just sort of comes out like that. And when you move something, like if you took the first song and put it last, it would really change everything. Like there's a lot of consideration. I mean, tempos, contrast, not too much contrast. Keys, you don't want to stay in keys for too long. Our first song, maybe like in a certain key, but yeah. So I would say that if you're really playing that music as a set, that sort of takes care of those kind of considerations and creates unusual situations, like albums that are not front loaded, for instance. I mean, I could not think of like a different place to put, let's say, Midnight Squirrel in that album.
I saw a couple 2012 shows at Martyrs with a couple where you play with bands that viewers of our channel would know, the Aristocrats and Alan Holdsworth. So anything stories you could tell us about those guys, and tell me, did you ever get Alan to try the Vanthrax?
No, I mean, Alan was not into weed. He was more into like having like 3 bottles of liquor. But yeah, yeah, I mean, how R-rated is the show? How many like what kind of stories are we getting away with?
Whatever you want. We talk about all sorts of crazy stuff here.
Okay. Well, I mean, Alan told us the greatest like one-liner story that he was telling us that he was touring in I think it was in Australia, or either he was in Australia or he was in England. But anyway, after the show, it was in the elevator, and there was like this Australian lady that was at the show, and he was sort of like giving her eyes, and she was vibing with him and giving him eyes back, but he was kind of shy, and he's just like, "Hello," and she's like, "It's like, how you doing, mate?" I don't have an Australian accent, but imagine an Australian accent. And he's like, "Oh, like, I'm Alan." It's like, "I know." It's like, "I know who you are, mate. I've been to your show." And he's like hitting on her a little bit, and then she goes, "Well, I'm on the bloods, mate, but you can put it up me shitter."
Alrighty then.
And I thought that was the best Alan Holdsworth story of all time.
It's pretty good.
He's like,
Not what you'd
he's
expect
like,
Alan
Dom
Holdsworth to
tells him
tell you, I
very
can tell you that much.
very, very gentleman, in a very gentleman way, and he was just saying, it's like, I was surprised. It was very odd. I was very surprised. So I don't know if he did it, but that was one Holdsworth story. With him, with the Vantrax, we actually, oof, yeah, poor Leonardo, man. Oh, Leonardo from Moon June hooked up that tour for us, and it was Jimmy Heslip and Virgil Donati and Alan, and we were to play a show in Toronto, and we played a show in Buffalo the night before, and our drummer at the time was a big weed smoker, and we like told him, it's like, you cannot have any weed in the border crossing. You have to get rid of all your weed when we get to the border crossing between Buffalo and Toronto. And he's like, no problem, I got you. And he literally makes us take a bathroom stop in Niagara Falls, like right by the Toronto border, and he smokes all of his weed, like a lot of weed. And he goes back in the van, and it just smells like we're growing a forest in the van, like with all of them like everybody there. So we get to the border, and the guy at the booth was like, it's like, step out of the vehicle, and just takes all of us, Alan, Jimmy, Virgil. They are not happy, right? We are in, like, this is us in our early 20s, but uh or mid 20s. It was, I wouldn't, I would be more strict now, but back then I didn't know any better. So that was a few hours ordeal, and they were pissed. And then that same drummer, we played this place called U Music in Toronto, which is like a music store slash concert venue. And where our green room was just by, like, part of their, like, warehouse store thing. And anyway, the day after, we drive back from the gig, and we get a call from the store manager, and it's like, your drummer stole from us. They're just like, no, there's no way. And he's just like denying. And he's like, we have video footage of your drummer stealing a pack of glow in the dark orange bass strings. Just like looking at her like, how fucking dumb are you? It's like, also, it's like, that's like a crime that would be so hilarious if, like, he just gave it to our bassist, and it's just like, he has like glow in the dark orange bass strings all of a sudden. It's like, I didn't do it. But yeah, so after that point, we had kind of, I would say, like 2.5 rough days of getting chewed out, and then they sort of forgave us. Uh, but we helped them a lot. We drove them all across, helped them set up their shit. Uh, and Alan did sincerely like our band. He wanted Danny to play on his album that never got finished, play saxophone. They were working out some stuff. Very sad story there. But we had really, really, really nice times that tour with Alan. Jimmy's also a super nice guy. Us and Virgil did not, we didn't become friends. But they let us. It wasn't like, even after that whole fiasco, we still opened for them in the coming years whenever they were, like, doing small things. So that was great. Scott, yeah, we opened for Scott a lot. Osnoy, Wayne Krantz, people like that. But yeah, most of the stuff we've done was just on our own, uh, playing just a bajillion shows. That's the big bulk of what we did. For me, it was, like, personally as a player, it was in 2010 through 12, getting to my two biggest heroes in high school were Alan Holdsworth and Scott Henderson, hands down. Like, there was zero guitar players on the planet that I liked more than those two. Um, and getting to play shows before them, on tours, like night after night after night, I just realized that even, like, at that age, we were just doing different things. Like, it was, there was, it made me mentally tough in a way, or prepared in a way that no other thing could have done that. I was not afraid of, like, an Instagram kid or YouTube kid emerging or something that, like, would make me shaken. I realized really quick, it's like, man, what matters the most is having, songs that you believe in, music that you like, the structures that you erect, first and foremost, will, like, will carry you through. So if the songs are good in fusion, you're already in a very, very small club of a few people who write nice music. And there are so many wrong, I mean, in my mind, just wrong turns, bad turns. There's a whole generation of motherfuckers in Hawaii shirts and calculator watches that almost destroyed the style for all of us. So I mean, I feel like this music took a few weird turns with a few people that shall remain nameless. um, but there's a certain, for me at least, there's a certain amount of badassery that needs to happen in it. And but what I said, I mean, I think if you really like the songs you're writing and believe in them, that's the number one thing. And then with your playing, you gotta commit to your vision of what good playing is and what it means, and not be afraid to walk towards the idiosyncratic and away from your heroes. I mean, I see a lot, like Holdsworth is the main dude right now, or and Scott too. I mean, you see a lot of guys that sound a whole infusion that sound a whole lot like them, and it's like when I talked, like it's like I always loved Alan, and Alan is you know, a great example of a true musical enigma, right? Anybody who's ever tried to approach the stuff he's doing, it's like, what are you thinking? It's the number one, you know, is the number one thing. But like, if you're one of those main dudes that followed in those footsteps, it's like, you understand that like people come to you and ask you, what is Alan thinking? It's just not, it's not a good thing for an adult past a certain point. Like heroes are very important because all of them, whether it's like Frank Sinatra or Louis Armstrong or Led Zeppelin, they they're all more related to each other than they are to everybody who's bad, right? They're all drawing from that place which is good. They're pointing in the right direction. But that place is also very big. And once you start walking towards it, there's, you gotta at a certain point just, you know, be an adult, stop it. Like I understand you like El Di Meola. Like just stop doing exactly that thing that he already did. Just stop the attempt. You got to shift it away from trying to impersonate and just suck it up, Buttercup, and like just walk towards that thing that you actually do. Right? It's like your song demands, unless you're so internally corrupted that you're also trying to write his music, then then it's not for everybody. At that point, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't understand that they love this music, but they belong in the audience. It's okay. It's okay to belong in the audience. It's okay that this is a hobby, but there's an in between place where you get to see a lot of dark shit, and that's also a part of it. I mean, you see people who are not. It's just the thing they're trying to do is not good. They took too many steps in a direction, and now they forgot who they are. So yeah, that's a danger. It's real. I'm sorry to bring it to a dark place, but it's a part of life. You see it a lot too.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
So the new album is Dirty Horse by Marbin. And
That's correct.
once again, marbinmusic.bandcamp.com. That's the place to go to find most of your releases, right? Still everything on CD and download and all that stuff, right? So
yeah. Wow, we're ending on that dark note. All right, so moral of the story: just end your life. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we have stuff on Spotify and stuff like that. Unfortunately, we decided we cannot beat the phenomena, so we joined it. But definitely the place to go is marbinmusic.bandcamp.com, and we're all on all the social, Facebook and stuff like that. I do a lot of little instructional things for people who care to hear what I have to say about it, and maybe learn a trick or two. And yeah, in July we're going on tour, playing a bunch of dates all over the Northwest, a lot of small town America, but going to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Dakotas, South Dakota, North Dakota, uh, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Colorado, Utah, Oregon, all over the place. So
you're making the
all
rounds.
the dates are on bentontown.com.
Cool.
Yeah, slash Marbin.
And then before
Yeah.
you know it, blink and you'll have more new music ready for us at the drop of a hat. So the never dull moment in the Marbin camp, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's there are some interesting moments for sure. Yeah, we need to make it through Danny's family situation and see where we land.
Cool. All right. Well,
But,
best of luck
hey,
to you guys, and
that's
keep
life.
us in the
Thank
loop
you.
with how that goes. And in the meantime, thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for watching. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together, all the damn time. Thanks again to Danny for joining us today, and also thanks for George and Eric for putting this all together. I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great one, and we'll see you real soon here on Sea of Tranquility. Take care. Bye-bye.